We are live.
Yes, because you don't get no warning.
What's up, everybody? Hey, Dennis, how's it going?
What's going on? What's going on?
All
What's
right,
happening?
so
It's Thanksgiving week,
Thanksgiving week it is,
the Super
and
Bowl of holidays.
we are right here living well today, as we do every Monday, Marriage Mondays, and we want to thank everybody that's going to be joining us today, and those who have joined us in the past. Tonight, we are going to be talking about taking each other for granted or
I'm gonna say not taking
not
each.
taking each other for granted. And if you have taken each other for granted, because we've all been guilty, how do we repair that?
Mhm.
How do we come back? All right. So as always, if you are here, please drop in the comments where you're from. And if you have any questions, drop those questions in. Again, our talk tonight is around not taking each other for granted in marriage, as it is so easy to do. And so we'll offer some insights from our, as we always do, insights from our own marriage. We just be putting ourselves out there, right, Dennis?
That's right. Everybody know what's going on in the Bullock and the Tillman's life, but we
Some
but
stuff they know a little, just a little
a
little.
little something, a little something.
A little something. Yeah, we share enough to make a difference, right? not 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 too much where we put all our business out there on the street.
Yeah, I don't think our children would appreciate that.
Yes, yes. So we got a few people joining us tonight. Again, if you are joining us, please just drop a comment. Let us know who you are and where you are from. And if you have any questions, drop those in as well, and we'll do our best to get to those. Um, Before we get into our talk, just to let you guys know at the beginning, or to remind you at the beginning of our conversation here, we do have a um, uh, event coming up in December, on
Mhm.
December 14th. We got our Winter Wonder.
Nicole, hi. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I got excited.
I had a little commercial going, and then
I
boom.
apologize. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
uh, yeah. So our Winter Wonderland luncheon is coming up on December 14th. If you are not already registered, I'm losing words here. If you're not already registered for that, I encourage you to go ahead and do that. If you're here in the Phoenix area, we got Black
Black sale.
Friday. We got a Black Friday sale happening right now, so you can get a little bit off of that ticket price if you go ahead and do that now. Um, all right, so that does it for the announcements, or the event announcements. All right, so let's jump right into our topic tonight:
Okay.
not taking each other for granted. And we want to do this tonight because we are in Thanksgiving week. And
Hmm.
hey, if you are thankful toward one another, then that can help you in this process of not taking each other for granted.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things I thought about when we were thinking about what we're going to talk about tonight was how many times, or how easy it is for us to actually do that. How easy it is for us to go through life as husband and wife and get very, very comfortable. And at some point, we just look up and like just expect things from each other. And we haven't said, appreciate you, thank you, or anything.
Hmm.
And that can really cause, some resentment in a marriage if you don't address
Yes.
Yeah, I think about all the times my wife has cooked for me, and I might not. I just started eating. Didn't say thank you, babe, for fixing this meal. Moving on. Just like, oh, I'm hungry. Start eating. Um, and then there's some times where us men, we want to be thought about. We want to be thanked about certain
Yeah.
things. And so I folded up all these clothes. I washed the dishes, and nobody says nothing. It's kind of like it's just expected of you. And I think sometimes we need to go back to just. I think we talked. We have a semester where we talked about kindness.
Yes. We did a kindness challenge.
That kindness
Yes.
challenge. So I think that's something. It was very good because sometimes you look back at some of the things that we take for granted. You start looking back, and it's like, man, I feel bad about how I've acted this particular way, and I'm very appreciative of what God has given me. But it goes back to some of the things. It might even go back to things spiritually, just waking up every single day and finding something that you're grateful and thankful about, and so that applies for your marriage also.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. I when I as I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about, like I think that over time in marriage, what happens is we get very comfortable, right? And so like I think about, like I was gonna ask you, Dennis, when you and Angie were dating, do you feel like you did a pretty good job of showing appreciation and, you know, being thankful and grateful towards her? Like how did you do with acknowledging those different things when you guys were just dating?
Well, I'm gonna keep it 100. A lot of the stuff I got was mimicked in the church. So when I got to church,
Hmm.
Bishop was teaching for men to open up the doors for the women and all that other type of stuff, and just kind of show that chivalrous type of attitude that you had towards women. So I remember those times where how I used to open up the door. I went out the way to make sure that that was happening. And then when you get married, comfort sets in, and
Hmm.
you stop opening the door. She can get the door herself. I didn't say no. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But you get comfortable, and it's almost kind of like let me say when we say this part. I know you said dating, but I'm thinking about when Chris was born. So for me, that's my first. She didn't have to wake up. She didn't have to do nothing. I was up, feeding Chris. I had the
Hmm.
bottle, on the bottles, all that other type of stuff. Lauren came around when the baby started crying. When she started crying, I had my eyes open just a little bit and try to close them back. But I was like, she got up first. Yeah, she just got up first, So you
Hmm.
start, you start taking things for granted. But in dating, I was very observant at first. We had a different type of deal going on because we had met earlier, and then we became friends, and then as our friendship grew, um, a lot of those things happened. So I would say yes, flowers were frequently, gifts were a little more frequent, during the dating stage.
Hmm.
Mm. What about me? What did I
What
do?
about you? What do
What do
you
you
mean?
do? You think I did a good job in the dating phase?
Yes, I do. I'm interestingly enough, I have been thinking about this. It's like this is one of the things I noticed. So when I remember when I was dating Daniel was the first guy, honestly, who consistently like opened doors for me, just very chivalrous, like very what would be the word for it? Not chivalry. Not mean some people would call it chivalry, but just like
That's what I would call it.
yeah, yeah. So, you show that you cherished me as this person that you're dating.
Hmm.
And then when we got married, you continued to do those things. But I will say over time, and I'm not just saying you, I'm only saying this because you asked me,
Sure.
because
Okay.
I know I have my ways as well where I have taken you for granted. But I will say that I feel like over time, it is the feeling of, well, this other person can do this for themselves, right?
Hmm.
Like they are capable. And a lot of it, honestly, is you just be tired. You just be tired. It's not that you're trying to be inconsiderate, right?
Hmm.
It's not that you don't still cherish the person, that you don't still care about them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you just tired.
Well, it's almost like, okay, let's take for instance opening the door.
Hey, Belinda.
You okay? Am I gonna open the door every single time? Like it's
Yes.
like I'm gonna do this like she gonna get in the car for the rest of our lives. So if I miss one or two or 20, is it gonna matter? Right? Is it
Yeah.
gonna
Or
make a
20.
difference? And those it's kind of like that's what goes through your head sometimes when you walk into the car and you're like, it's really hot out here, and if I open the door, she's not gonna really want me to close it because the car is not on. So I might as well just let her open the door. right? So just little stuff like that goes through your mind.
I think
But
it's exactly what you said. You get comfortable. You really get comfortable with certain things. I know this might sound gross, but back when you was dating, you probably you didn't want to make any flagellants type of things. You didn't want to fart, or you
I'm
you
about to
know
say flagrant. That's food. So I was like, I didn't know where you was going with that, Dennis.
I'm about to go to the restroom and be right back. You have your business. Then when you get married, you just like let it go.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
is this? What's that smell? It's like, you know, we get comfortable and we stop doing the things that really. What is the scripture type? This those small things that spoil the vine.
Yes, it's the little foxes,
Yeah,
that spoil the vine.
yeah. I think we stop doing those small things because we get
Yes.
comfortable. We get comfortable.
Yeah. And you know what? That it really does make me think about our relationship with the Lord, right? Because there is, I think that God knows, not that God knows everything. So I don't think he knows. He knows that it's very easy for us to get familiar with when you start to have a familiarity with something, then that's when you stop putting in the effort. So and you don't keep it in the same level of esteem that you had for it before, right?
That's good.
And that's true about our relationship with the Lord. It's true about our relationship with each other. And it's like, so the more familiar we become, I think we have to like almost over compensate for the fact that we know that we're going to be familiar, because how can you live with a person for 20 years, 15 years, 5 years, 5 months, and not get familiar with them to the point where you start to dishonor them
Yeah.
because I just know you always going to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. You ain't
Mhm.
going nowhere.
Yeah.
We've been in this too long. And I think that's a very great example. That's a very great example. And sometimes as you think about it, it's like, man, my goodness. We have gotten so familiar with our relationship with God. We have gotten so familiar with our spouse that we begin to dismiss things. And let's not even add in any offense, intense fellowships, hard times. Let's not even
Yes.
add that in. You know,
Yeah.
that takes people to totally different places. But my
That's
goodness.
that's such a good point, Dennis, because those things, then you also have unforgiveness, right? Because so like, right, I think that like, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm processing this in real time,
Okay.
but like we live in a very celebrity culture. So the further away people are from you, the more esteem you give to them, right? Because it's almost like you see them as infallible, and like it's almost like they have this magical kind of quality to them, right? But the closer people get to you, when they get up close, that's when we start to dishonor people, because we like, oh, I see her at church all the time. Oh, I see them at the football games. Oh, I've seen them blowing their kid, wiping their kids' nose, right?
Right.
We don't hold people in the same esteem. And that includes our spouse, right? Oh, like you said, I heard you pass gas, last night,
Yeah.
while we in the bed,
You
right?
burping and farting.
Right.
Who are you?
Right. You wake up this morning, you got bad breath, right?
Mhm.
And when you go work out, I'm like stinky after I work out, right? So then if you're not careful, you start to diminish
Yep.
the honor that you have for this person.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot here in the community is intentionality, right? In order for your marriage to work, you have to be very intentional, because our natural state is to be
Yes.
selfish
Yep.
and is to drift apart from one another. That's the natural state. Oneness takes effort to stay together and then become one. So I wanted to bring up a couple of things. I wrote a couple of things down in terms of what can you do when you're, because you are going to take each other for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable. If you've been together for more than 3 minutes, you're gonna do it. And so one of those things is serving each other without expectation.
Mm.
And I got an example a good example here. As a matter of fact, it's right here. So these are Kendra and I like these little gums from PUR, and so whenever she goes to the store, she knows the ones I like, and she'll pick them up and then just put them on my nightstand, right, and beside my bed. And that is serving without expectation. She's not expecting me to do it for her, or she's not expecting anything that night or anything for bringing that. She's just like, I just know.
I ain't expecting nothing that night.
Well, maybe you are. Maybe you are. I would love that expectation. Come on, wait. But but yeah, so dropping the little gums off there,
Yeah.
it let me know that she's thinking about me when she's away from me.
Yes.
And I kind of picked that up from her because she does that better than I do, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll go out, get something, come back, and she'd be like, where mine? It's like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So I do better than now because I'm following her lead where that's concerned. So
you have been doing that too.
Serving each other without expectation is an intentional way to reverse the tendency to take each other for granted.
Yeah. Dennis, what you think about that?
I was just thinking about leftovers because my wife, she'll have leftovers and she has some good leftovers, and they'll just stay in the refrigerator, for 2-3 days. And I just go ahead and knock it on out. I figure she's not going to eat it. It's just all upset. Like, why you eat my leftovers? I like to eat them. Well, you could at least ask. That's a sign of taking people for granted. I should, be able to ask. And so, but I think when we did the kindness challenge, that helped me remember doing little small things. One of the things that I did for a while was I would take little small notes and I'll write certain things to my wife and I'll put them in her purse or I'll put them in different spots and everything like that. Now the expectation was that she would find it and then go a couple of days and you little wait and you're like, oh, you left me a little note. Her purse is like, I didn't hear nothing for about a couple of weeks. I'm like, I left a note.
She cleared her purse out, huh?
Just looking, and she said, oh, that's so sweet of you. I'm like, yes, 2 weeks late, But
the problem, Dennis, is you put it in a very hard to find place. I would never put anything in my wallet.
I should have known. I should have never put it in her purse. But I love the thoughtfulness. One of the things that I do for myself that I've been consistent in is the text messages of saying I love you to my wife. Not looking for her to respond or anything like that. She'll normally respond, but I know just sending those little small things because we're constantly on our phones. So I figured, hey, while I'm at work, I'll send her a little is it called a GIF or emoji or something like that, and I'll say I love you and everything like that, or doing all that type of stuff. And so I do that consistently, and that's how I keep my mind stayed on my wife throughout the day, throughout the week, and just remind me how special she is to me, and that reminds me of what God has given to me and a gift in my wife. So
awesome. So if you are joining us and you have something that you do to overcome the tendency to take each other for granted, drop it in the chat and let us know.
Because those small things matter, right? Those small things, like I think we've all heard that saying, death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? So it's like over time, the little things that we do that can harm each other, right? Yep. The things that take tokens out of the love bank,
right,
and cause your love bank to start to go empty,
right?
Versus the things that we're doing that may seem insignificant, but they aren't insignificant, and because they add up with time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I think Gary Chapman's book too, The Love Languages. That's dwelling according to knowledge, knowing your spouse, knowing what they like, and not being okay with keep on hitting that area and saying, hey, I'm gonna just keep on pouring in to the point where it's a habit, where I know that this is what she likes. So I'm gonna consistently keep on doing it until it becomes a habit to where it don't come to where it's like, I gotta do this again. This, I know she likes this, and then it evades the thought of reciprocation, because sometimes you say, well, I've been doing all this. I want to be having some reciprocation. I want you to reciprocate what I'm doing for you. But we have totally different love languages. So we might want to, it might have to be a balance, because if your gifts and you're trying to get out of debt, I might not be able to give you a gift every single time that you don't want it. You got to be creative, and I'm pretty sure people not making gifts, it's like, oh, I don't know. I made something like a paper airplane for you. I was thinking about you, and you're like, man, thank you. That's not the type of gift I was thinking about. Thinking about
and Dennis, share what the love languages are, just in case, because you never know. Some people may not have ever heard of that before.
All right, so we got acts of service. So I know I heard a comedian talking about that's not really a love language. That means I got to do something. But I thought it was kind of funny what he's saying. But acts of service, I think gifts is another one.
Yeah. Our oldest son love language is gifts.
Yeah, quality time. That's one of mine. Quality time, and then I'm forgetting these other two. So we got acts of service, gifts. Physical touch. Physical touch is one. I can't think of the fifth one. I don't know what the fifth one is.
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. When my wife told me about our kids' love languages, so when they took a test and everything like that, I didn't know my son's was words of affirmation. And so when I was trying to come at him really hard in basketball, he wasn't receiving my being the third, fourth coach on his team. He didn't receive it. And so that was great help for me, for my son.
So what is your love language? So the people that are watching right now, and when you watch it on the replay, they want you to type replay. But what is your love language? And like the significance of learning the love language is so that you can speak love to your spouse in a way that they understand it, right? And so that's the purpose of the love language. So first of all, do you know your own love language? What is your love language? And then, so Nicole says, I try to be specific when I say why I am thankful to him. Yes, get specific when you're talking to your spouse. Like that is like, I don't, even if your love language is not like, that's not the top of your list. First of all, we have all of the love languages are important to all of us, but there's just almost like a ranking of the importance. So they need all five. Your spouse needs all five. You need all five. And so, so one of them is to affirm the person with your words, right?
Right.
And so you want to be specific, because I can say, oh, you're such a great husband. And I'm sure you will receive that. But when I start to tell you, I so appreciate the way that you have always been so kind to me and treated with me with so much respect and so much honor, like it is more meaningful when you're specific. So thank you for sharing that, Nicole.
Well, the other thing there is that I think we should be prompt, right? As prompt as we can in the moment for if somebody does something for you. I remember one time when I was working in corporate America, working for Intel, they had this program, and really the program was about teaching leaders how to be more thankful. And people that came out of that program was really, it was two words that they learned to use. They knew the words, but they weren't using them, and that is thank you. So the science behind it and the research behind it was you actually get more loyalty from people when you are thankful, when you tell them thank you, even though, because I think we have this attitude a lot, and I've even heard people say this even in marriage, where I don't need to thank them for that. That's their job, right? You ain't a man if you ain't doing. I ain't thanking you for that. It's like, you should thank people for even the thing that you expect them to do. Like a husband, Jesus said, the word of God tells us to lay down our lives for our wives. So if we take a bullet, right, that is expected, right? We take the knife, that's expected, but it's still hurts if you don't appreciate it.
Right.
It's like I'm hurt more by you not appreciating the fact that I got shot.
Right.
That I'm out here, doing this thing every single day, and I never get, even if words of affirmation is not your love language, if you never get thank you for being who you are, for doing what you do, for loving me the way you love me, it's going to be a breakdown.
Yeah.
Oof, so good.
Yeah. I like how Nicole talked about when in being specific. I think that's another way where you start to develop the habit of not taking each other for granted, because you remind yourself specifically of what that is. So it's not just for the person, or it's not just for your spouse or your husband or your wife. It's for you, because you start to remember, man, specifically, this is what, my husband does. Specifically, this is what my wife does. And so you put yourself back into remembrance. And when you might want to have, a moment, you have a bad thought to come up. Hopefully there's enough of that remembrance of those specific things of what they do reminds you, man, you know what? I don't even need to trip. I don't even need to trip about this. What she does or what he does.
Yes.
And man, I'm telling you, I'm blessed. I am blessed. So that's I thought I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I agree with you so much, Dennis. Like, it does when you start to count your blessings. The Bible talks to us about counting your blessings one by one.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really start to think about all the things that you appreciate or respect about someone, it really outweighs the ways that the things that you don't like or the things that frustrate you about them. And what I think happens too, when you start looking for ways like to be thankful, to show gratitude, it actually, your mind will start to look for that automatically, because we train ourselves to either look for the good or look for the bad. I remember when Daniel and we went through our whole thing with real estate. It was a financial storm in our marriage, and it was a really hard time and a hard season. And I remember going through a season where I all I did was I wrote down three things every single day that I was thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
It was so simple, but it was my way of not, I had grieved the process that we went through. We were working through it and coming out of debt and all that stuff. And I just needed to look for the good. I needed to look for what was God doing? How was God moving? Instead of focusing on, well, this ain't paid off yet, and we got to work on this a little bit longer, and this person is mad at us because of that. I just took all the focus off of all of that so that I could every day just write down. And it got easier and easier, because it was hard at first
Right,
to write down them three things. But then it got easier and the list got longer and longer and longer. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're watching this and maybe you are in a season like that in your marriage, where you are like, all I can see is everything that I don't like about this person and all the ways that they've harmed me, all the ways that they've hurt me. In addition to prayer and therapy, if that's what you need, and talking to your friends, and getting that community around you, and forgiving your spouse. In addition to all of that, also count your blessings. Make a list of what you're thankful for, even if you can only write down one thing every day, because that list will start to add up, and then you'll start looking for that.
That's good, because I think we
Oh, is that us?
that us? Okay.
Oh, no.
I think in marriage there's always stuff to point out, right? You're always, every day you get up, you're gonna run into problems.
Yes.
Right? In marriage, in life, in business, in in your community, in church, you're going, if you look hard enough, and well, you don't really have to look that hard. You gotta sometimes look a little bit harder to find those things that are positive, because you are so inundated with the negative,
so
right?
True,
of what's going on in life, whether that be your health or your relationship or whatever it might be. But looking to, just like Jesus, the Word of God tells us that you got two choices. You can choose to be anxious, or you can choose to work to pray. Right. So instead of going or looking toward the anxiousness and negativity, God says, hey, if you just turn this way
Mm-hmm.
and pray, I'll take care of that piece. So in our marriages as well, when we turn toward this, there's these concept by Dr. Gottman that he
Yes.
puts out. Either you're turning away from your spouse or you're turning toward your spouse, and that's a theme in
Mm,
marriage. There's really no in between, right?
yeah,
Like Jesus said, you're hot or cold, because if you warm, you might as well be cold, because I'm gonna spit you out, right? In marriage, very similar. You either are moving toward oneness or you are drifting apart. Right?
mm,
You're not sitting there in the middle. And to
right,
move toward that oneness, you have to be intentional and take some action to
yeah,
make sure that you're doing that in your marriage, because every day is going to present problems, and every day will present opportunities. If you look for them, you can find them.
That's good,
yeah.
babe.
I feel like culture nowadays train us how to respond in our marriage sometimes. Like, for instance, we got all these judge shows. You got You Think You Can Dance. You got The Voice. You got uh, all these model shows and everything like that, and they're judging people constantly. And
Yep.
sometimes we take that into we watch, and then when we want to respond to our spouse, or we're communicating, it's coming from not necessarily that I'm saying that I'm judging person, but you become this uh, person of observing and giving critique, and then sometimes critique
Yes.
to maybe strong criticism. It's like, yeah, you look good in that dress, but your belly, what?
Right.
So it started like, yeah, the food was good, but it needed a little more, just a little more of this and a little bit more. Well, why don't you cook the food then? So it's kind of like we deal with these a lot of criticism, because
Mm-hmm.
kind of embraces this judge. I'm judging you. I'm judging the way you sound. Yeah, you did good, but you didn't. We're, we love you, we got love for you, but we're just not in love with you. It's kind of one of those type of things where you just kind of like, oh, why I didn't come here to get judged. And so we bring these cultural things into our relationships, even with our kids. I mean, you even think about with grades. Well, I made a C. Made a C.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you couldn't get a B.
Right.
So
what
true, Dennis.
what's
So true.
happening? What's happening? And so I think sometimes we just got to learn how to celebrate where people are at, and
Yes.
learn how to become creative in creative in kindness, because you can win a lot of people. I think just learning how to, I think we talked about it yesterday in one of our meetings. Just perspective. Just look at it from a different perspective. When you start to get a little judgy, you start to observe, seeing certain things. Pull yourself back. Count to three. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. 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 Made me think of something else before I say that, because your mind. I know from me growing up, playing the dozens, you had to think quick on the negative. You had to think of something bad to talk about somebody so you can get them back for what they said about
Mhm.
you. Now I've learned, especially with youth, and especially with my wife, you got to learn how to encourage. We used to say this back in youth days: we don't fry, we edify. We don't bring we don't bring a person down, we build them up. And so if you have the attitude of, I'm looking at always how to build somebody up, especially my wife, especially my family, especially my team members, how can I build you up? And that's going to be the top priority uh, uh, in this, especially this week. This should be the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
love that,
Yep.
Dennis. How can you build your spouse? So how can you build each other up? Like that's such an important thing. Like I just had a conversation with our daughter a couple of weeks ago. It's like you want to be in relationship with people that are bringing out the best in you, not the worst in you.
Mhm.
And you should be in relationships where you are building each other up. And
Yeah.
if you find yourself consistently in a relationship where you always feel pulled down by the person, then you got to do some deep, especially married couples specifically, I'm talking to. You got to do some soul searching and figure out, okay, what is going on here? that this person that I'm married to, they always seem so critical of me. Or if you're the one doing the criticizing all of the time, why? What is this? What is going on?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if we could want another tool is sometimes we need to just stop. Like sometimes when you're in a moment with your spouse, you need to just pause. You need to stop talking and understand what's going on with you right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are so critical of what they're doing all of the time. You always have something to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because we are, again, going back to culture, we have such a negative connotation. We look for the bad in people. We see certain things, and what culture determines what is attractive, so that's what culture says. So now when we see somebody that's maybe opposite in our eyes of what that
Mhm.
might look like, then we're kind of almost lowering that person. And that's like, no, that's not reality. And so there's beauty
Goodness.
in everybody. There's beauty in everybody. I don't care if they got crooked teeth. I don't care if they got no hair. There's
Mhm.
beauty in everybody, and that's the perspective that we need to have. And so when we see our wives, they might culture might tell you this is what a nice looking woman looks like. No, my wife looks nice,
Mhm.
regardless of what culture is telling me. There's beauty here. and uh,
Mhm.
and as you build that kindness, you stop taking each other for granted. It becomes a just a big I don't know what word I want to try to say, but it becomes big enough for you to look at culture and say, that's all lies. That's not real. This is not real. This is not what attractiveness is supposed to be. Attractiveness is what the Bible says. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And so maybe your beauty just don't behold me, but there's still some beauty in you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So good.
So
So
let me
good.
ask you guys this question. Because I experienced this morning when I was taking my son to school. So usually we're talking. I didn't even want to talk to him this morning because he made me mad, right? And
Because
so
he was late again.
and so when you do that, right, when you are in a situation where maybe you've done something to offend your spouse or they've done something to offend you, and you don't even want to talk to them at the moment. What do you do to overcome that so that because in that moment or in those times, and depending on how long you hold grudges, hopefully not long, um, you can really start to take each other for granted because even though I know you're gonna be here, I'm mad at you, so stay away from me right now, right? So that's kind of still a form of taking each other for granted. Like you're in the space, but we ain't talking right. I'm not talking to you right now. So how do you get over that? What are some of the things that you can do to get over that so you can get back to appreciating one another?
Dennis, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I just say for me, it's always communication. I'm what I have gotten comfortable with my wife and let her know how I feel about certain things. I'm not necessarily, and I'm talking about big things. I'm not really talking about little small things. But one thing that my wife, she is who she is. Sometimes she can be here one moment and then she's over here, and I can be sometimes. I like to stay focused sometimes on one area, and let's complete this. She called it multitasking. I don't believe in multitasking. I feel like finish this one task first, move to the next. She might be able to do multiple things, and so with that, sometimes we bump heads, and when we bump heads, I have to bring it up to her and talk about it. We have weekly meetings, and during those weekly meetings, we're able to talk about some of the things that how our week was, what was some of the wins, and in that, when we're talking about what some of the wins look like, we might say, "Hey, this week you seemed like you was just kind of like everywhere. What was going on? You seemed like you was a little anxious for certain things." And that opens the door to talk about, I've been thinking about, my wife has employees, and so she was thinking about some things that would happen at work, and that's probably why I was kind of scattered and I was kind of off. And so communication is huge for me. So I talk about it. If it's something that's bothering me, instead of just kind of holding in which would used to be my default. I used to hold stuff in. And then by the time I get so frustrated, I'm fussing, yelling, hollering, you never do this, you never do this. Well, you never. So I communicated, and we have a weekly meeting every single week that we can discuss those moments. And then of course we incorporate prayer.
You said one thing that was in my notes, and that you say you and your wife have weekly meetings.
Yeah.
That's one of the intentional things that we can do to combat taking each other for granted is regular check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
that's right.
That's what you were saying right there.
Yeah.
We sit down, it's intentional, and we check in with each other. So awesome. We on the same wavelength, brother. On the same wavelength.
I want to read Nicole's comment. She said, for me, I struggle the hardest when things are done, but not the way I would do it. In those times, I try to refocus and remember that he did it and he did his best. I pray and God always sets my eyes right.
Okay, I got to talk to you about this one, Nicole, because one of my favorite scriptures is having the
speckitis,
having the speck in your brother, talking about the speck in your brother's eye when you got a beam in your own eye. Mm-hmm. And Kendra and I, we talk about this a lot too, because we run a business and we run a ministry, and we can't do it all, right? And anytime you delegate, they're going to do it their way. And it's not going to look like what you want it to look like. It's not going to look exactly like the way that you would do it. And it may even seem like that's garbage to you. But at the end of the day, it's not about how, it's about who, right? Okay. Your spouse is a who that's very important in your life. And you don't want to carry the whole load of everything around the house. You don't want to do all the dishes all the time, or wash the clothes all the time, or always be the one to make the bed, always be the one to sweep and mop the floor, always be the one to take care of the pool, you got to give that away and accept, that, like you said, they have done the best that they can. Yeah. And in your eyes, it might not be as good as you, but it got done. Mm-hmm. It got done. And hey, maybe even if it's not the way that you think it should be done, maybe it's just as good. It may be just good. And you just have that critical eye that you will always have, right? And you just gotta let it go. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it goes so deep as how you fold your clothes, how you hang them up. It could be those type of things. Well, I don't hang up my pants that way. You need to hang them up this way. And it's like, well, I don't see the I'm trying to get it done. I'm trying to move on to the next. And I just think you start to appreciate each other a little bit more when you start to distance yourself from the control of how things need to be done. I've been that way so many times, and I just like, I can't control them. I can't. They are their own person, and I got to embrace that as much as possible. And so it's like what you can't control, you just let it go. It's some things you just let it go, and you move on from that. And I'm talking about the small things. I'm not talking about things where you might be subtly manipulated, or, they're just not doing certain things and you feel strongly about that. You have those discussions, but I'm talking about those little small things that, like the dishes, I get on to my kids about that, and I know one thing, my wife, she does not like how I put the plastic where she's like, who did this? I stay silent as much as possible, because I know it's me that shoved it in there and just and just left it, but yeah, I think
when we first got married, I went through all that, right? The little foxes, right? Oh, why you ball towels up? Why you fold socks like that? I was like, and after I matured, I was like, that was so dumb. That was so
Who
dumb.
has the energy for it?
But when you are young, you do have the energy for it because you're looking for a fight. But after you mature, and you're like, you know what? That's actually my wife. I want to actually appreciate and enjoy her. So I'm gonna let that go. somebody, Belinda.
Well, wait, before we go to Belinda,
Okay.
I want to go back to Tawana when she talks about praying, because I do think that we are so used to telling people to pray, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I wanna say something about prayer
Okay.
in the context of all of this. So I agree with you, Tawana, because I think that I can't, so much of my shift that has happened in my thinking has happened because of prayer. Not because I'm this great person, this wonderful person. I remember when
You are.
when I read this book, the first time I remember reading the book, The Power of a Praying Wife,
Mm-hmm.
for the first time. And I was like thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna pray for him because he need me praying for him. I got this issue. I want you to change that. I want this to be different. I like this. I want this thing over here to look like this. And I remember when I read the book for the first time, and she was just like, the first chapter was praying for your wife. Right. And it was just like, and then I noticed the pattern with God. Every time I would go to God in prayer, God would be like, oh yeah, we're gonna get to Daniel. But what about when I told you to do such and such? It go back. God brought this scripture back. So yeah, I know you got a problem with him, but let's talk about this big old beam sticking out of your eye. I see the speck in his eye, but let's talk about the plank that's sticking out of your eye. And I used to be like, okay, God, whatever, Jesus.
That is so true.
That it does prayer, if you allow God to really deal with you about who you are and the role that you're playing in the relationship, it will change you. It will transform you. The renewing of your mind, right? That's what the word says. Is that we are transformed by the renewing of our mind with the word of God, right? And so when we spend the time in God's presence, God can start to renew your mind about how you're thinking about your spouse, how you're thinking about your situation, how you're thinking about, forgiveness or unforgiveness. Like, he will start to renew your mind. And so you need the time with him in prayer.
Yes.
That's so good.
Yeah,
I have never been in prayer and said, Lord, this woman that you gave me, and he said, yeah, I agree with you. I see what you're going through. He's never, ever put my wife on blast in my prayer time. So
yeah, he changes your perspective, right? And you say it a lot, Dennis. It's all about perspective. And a lot of times we just have to allow God to allow us to see it from that different perspective. See it the way that he sees it, right? Because he put us together, so he sees the good in you, he sees the good in your wife, right? And he can allow you, when you are seeing through a glass darkly, he can illuminate those things which are great in your spouse.
So true.
And I believe if we start to illuminate the greatness, then it would so overshadow those small things.
You preaching, Daniel Tillman.
They would start to, go into the distance, right? Fade into the distance in your mind.
That is so good. And I remember, like, I used to tell you that you was my hero all the time, right? And it actually, like, I was saying it, because I meant it as, a compliment, and it was a compliment.
You really mean it.
But what I really meant it. And then what I noticed is, like, when I start to see you that way, like, that's how I'm talking about you, as the hero. Like, oh, babe, you did this. Thank you. I appreciate you for doing that. And it was like, I could see you almost be like, yeah, I am. I am a hero. Like, right. I think about, what if I was like, you always, why are you obnoxious? Like, if I always had something critical to say to you, what if that was my response?
Either I would shrink to just a semblance of who I am, or I would just leave.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Right. So you want to address Belinda's question?
Yeah. So yeah, again, it's about perspective, because everybody has talents and they're not all the same. It's like when we first got married, we as young married people would compare our spouse to what we knew. Like, I'm coming out of a 2-person home. Kendra's coming out of a 2-person home. So what I learned from my father and from my mother is what's setting my expectation in this marriage. And when I get in this marriage and Kendra doesn't do things the way my mama did it,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm looking at her with a critical eye. Like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to put the toe of the sock into fold it all the way up into the sock. You're not supposed to leave towels on the sink and or whatever it was, right? So I was being very critical of little stuff like that. And so to Belinda's comment here, where her father was very handy around the house.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was too. I'm okay, but I am not anywhere near as handy as my dad is, right? So that was his way of bringing in an income. That's what
Right.
he
That's
did day
right.
in and day
That's
out.
right.
And I used to work with him. And I said to myself up on one of those roofs one day, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I went and grabbed another skill set. Right. So though I'm not as good with a hammer as he is, he don't know his way around a keyboard like I do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have our
Mhm.
talents and our gifts, and we just have to appreciate those. And hey, if your husband isn't as handy, there's a lot of handymen you can just call up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And take that off y'all plate. So
I'm so glad you brought that up, Belinda, because I think that does happen in marriage, where especially if you admired something about your
Yep,
parent, like
yep.
your family of origin, something that they did, and you really admire that, and now your spouse doesn't do that, right?
Mhm.
And so, because you had an expectation going in,
Yeah.
that the spouse would do that.
Men do this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and
yeah.
you can, again, you have to reframe and get a different perspective, because there are many men and that have many talents. So not all men are handy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't diminish their manhood if they aren't as handy as the one that you knew before.
Yeah. And that goes back to us putting our focus on what do we appreciate about the person? What do we respect about them? And then how can you start to honor them and show gratitude and thankfulness? I want to say this, as we start to wrap up our time, I wanted to go back just briefly to what you talked about, how I know that some people that are going to watch this, sometimes the reason why we don't say thank you because we have an attitude of you should be doing this, right? If you're a wife and you're taking care of the kids, you don't necessarily think, oh, well, let me tell her thank you for that, or how can I lighten her load, let me look for ways to help her, because you thinking, oh, well, you're the mom, you should be doing that. Or if you're the husband, and I know I'm talking in gender roles, y'all, so if this doesn't look quite like this in your house, you get the spirit of what I'm saying. So, like, if you're the husband and he makes sure the yard is cut, and you never say thank you, because it's like, oh, you should be doing that. So why would I thank you for doing that? Or even you go to work every day. Why should I thank you because you go to work every day? You should thank them because it's something that you appreciate, because you want to honor them, right? It's like, let's bring back honor in our relationships, in our marriages, where you can thank the person for what they are doing, the love that they have for their family, that they are willing to get up and go to work every day and make sure that the family has what they need, that they're making sure the children are taken care of. They're making sure that people feel loved in the household. And we do that by saying thank you.
Yeah.
We thank them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I analogy that I'm thinking about is like if you're in a race and your car is winning or about to win, that thank you is that nitro that goes into the tank
Yes.
and gives that car that extra boost to come across the line 1st,
Mhm.
right? So you good, the car is in good condition, but that thank you is like the extra fuel that you're throwing on the fire.
That's good.
But
Like that.
as Dennis, did you have any last minutes? I wanted to kind of read off, kind of recap what we've talked about tonight a little bit.
No, I just want to say as we, in the spirit of being thankful, I'm very thankful of my wife. She wasn't able to be on, but my wife, she takes care of herself, and she's meeting doctor's appointments and everything like that. And so, in preparation for what she needs to do, she's always done that. As we get older, you find yourself just doing those maintenance checks, on your body, and I appreciate about that because she's going to take care of her body. Going to take care of herself. And I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for when she does that. It kind of reminds me that, hey, I'm looking at longevity. I'm trying to keep myself together. And it's not just for her, it's for me.
Yes.
She's doing that for me, and I think that's some of the things that I feel like it's been a pattern or a blueprint for me. Okay, I want to make sure I go to the doctor. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself because I don't want no other man having her. I don't want to be checking out early because I wasn't grateful and thankful for what God has given me in my body and my wife and my family. So let's not end the stewardship so early. Let's try to eat right. Let's do some things to keep this going as long as possible. And so I'm grateful and so thankful for my wife. So that's what I want to say.
Amen. Awesome. All right, B. Angie B. So, and if you want to be thankful to us, please, if you haven't already, subscribe. If you're watching us over on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and share this video. Like if your spouse isn't on tonight, send them a little text with the video in there. Say, hey, subscribe to this channel and watch this.
Yes.
And then back off. Right? Don't force it on them or anything. Just, hey, babe, I think you would like this. So do that for us. And also come on out to our, if you're here in the Valley or if you want to travel, go ahead, come on out to our Winter Wonderland lunch. That's going to be happening on December 14th. We're going to have a lot of fun. Okay, so to kind of recap some of the things that we talked about on how you can go against the grain of the tendency of taking each other for granted. So number one, gratitude, right? Be thankful and try to do it every day. Find something to be thankful for every day. And number two, quality time. We talked about quality time, spending, and all these are intentional. And then, so we kind of talked about also affirming each other and small acts of kindness. And serving each other without expectation. I told you about the little gum packets that my wife will leave on my nightstand. And Dennis talked about some things that Angie was doing for him. And then Dennis also mentioned that he and Angie have a weekly meeting. And so doing regular check-ins. So these are all things that we can do to, go against our tendencies to be selfish and to take each other for granted.
Yeah. I'll add another one in there that we didn't talk about. Well, we did talk about it, so I won't probably say anything about it. I was about to say sex.
I was about to say, I knew you was going to say sex. I knew it. I knew that was coming.
I missed that. What about sex?
That's a way to show gratitude.
Oh, hallelujah. Yes. Show your gratitude with your attitude.
Hilarious. All right, so y'all look for ways this week. So how can you show gratitude to your spouse this week? Like this is a good week. We're all thinking about Thanksgiving, things we're thankful for, people we're thankful for.
Absolutely.
So how can you show gratitude to your spouse this week? So
amen.
All right, y'all.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another full hour of Marriage Mondays with the Living Well host. I'm about to say we're the Tillmans. And
we the Bullocks, but my wife is not here, but she's over there. But
Dennis representing for the Bullocks. And hey, join us back here next week for another session. And until then, peace and happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, y'all.
Happy Thanksgiving. We love you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.